Good morning. EB here for our weekly update. Doing it today on Wednesday instead of tomorrow because tomorrow's July 4th. It's always one of my favorite holidays of the year. Um, love studying the Revolutionary War, big fan of Washington and what he did, and reading about Jefferson and obviously John Adams. And there was a series on TV about John Adams. I've read his book and just amazing the foresight that the founding fathers had to get together in Philadelphia, where I'm from. I used to go down there all the time to down where the Liberty Bell is in Independence Hall, and it was just awesome stuff to study and learn about. To think that these guys would come from all over the East Coast and have a constitutional convention and be able to put down a document. It's a time of reflection. People sacrifice for our country, so it's a great holiday. Cookouts, fireworks, living on the lake boat ride. Good morning, Candy. How you doing? Um, so it is with that said, and I'm very political, always been a political animal, love politics, whether it's, from the Republican side or the Democrat side. I love tension and discord. That's why I'm a litigator. So love to study history, was a big Watergate fan, used to read about G. Gordon Liddy and all the things. And then we had the Iran Contra affair with Reagan in the 80s and selling arms to Nicaragua and all the different things that we had. And then, of course, the first Desert War with Saddam Hussein, beating him back with Kuwait. We had Schwarzkopf then we had the second Iraqi war, and of course, then Afghanistan. So it was, um, with that, I want to start talking about what this last week has been. I am, uh, I have to be candid and tell you, I am not a Trump supporter. I am a registered Republican. I voted Republican my entire life up until 2016. Um, I kind of voted for Biden because I just felt the country needed to be stabilized over the last 4 years. Um, but last Thursday night's debate was absolutely shocking to me on a number of levels. One, it was Biden who asked for the debate to be this early in the political season before the conventions. He wanted the ground rules. They negotiated it. He certainly had 7 days worth of preparation that his team publicly declared, and his showing was embarrassing for him. It was embarrassing for the Democrats. It was embarrassing for our country. I think it weakened us on the international stage and gave a lot of fuel for some autocrats that may not be too pleased with um, the United States. We see what's happening in France, where Macron called for early elections and his party got crushed, and now his party is 30% of parliament. Le Pen, who is a hard right um, person that's a lot like Trump. Um, she will become the next prime minister. There's a 28-year-old disciple of hers that's now going to run parliament. Um, we're seeing all over the world autocracy being explored by different countries as opposed to democracy. There used to be a fight for democracy. We fought wars for democracy. People wanted us to assist their countries for democracy. We're doing that in Ukraine now. But I'm very upset. Good morning, Morgan from Texas in April. Happy 4th to you. Um, I'm very upset by Biden's showing on a number of levels. One, he is too old. Just going to say it. Air traffic controllers have to give up their job at 57. We need to have age limits. I think Trump's too old. I think he's got other issues that I won't get into, but I think just it's a job that ages people. Remember, Barack Obama came in with black hair, he left with gray hair. George Bush came in with dark hair, he left with gray hair. It's the most important and highest stressful job in the world. And you know, Reagan, when he was president, had Michael Deaver, Don Regan, and James Baker. and everybody knew that they were running um, the presidency. Reagan was more ceremonial. He gave that appearance of strength, of vitality, even at an elderly age, with his beautiful hair that he had, and everybody felt like Reagan on the horse. Jesse Jackson said in 1984, I'd rather have FDR in a wheelchair than Reagan on a horse. And the metaphor is that, well, do we accept Biden, who will be drooling by the time he's 86 years old and wearing diapers, and could be incoherent? Unless somebody, invokes the 25th Amendment, if he's fortunate enough to get reelected. Um, but he does surround himself with very capable people. And over the last 4 years, we've had the most bipartisan legislation in 20 years. Don't forget, we've had an infrastructure bill. We've had the semiconductor chip bill to start factories in Ohio. So we're bringing back our chip production in the United States. We got to the point where 3% of chips were only being produced in the United States. We have him approving, with bipartisan support, the lowering of prescription drug costs for diabetes. It's $35 a month now, as opposed to like $400 a month. So many good things. When he came in the office, the unemployment was high. It's now the lowest it's ever been. Stock market was at 24, and Trump said if he doesn't get reelected, it's going to go to 18,000 during Biden's term. We're at 39,000. He's only run up $4.2 million of $1 trillion of debt, where Trump in 4 years ran up $8.9 trillion in debt. Trump is talking about putting on 10% tariffs on all goods that are coming into our country. That's not going to cure inflation. That's just going to increase prices. But the point is that Biden showed who he is, and that is there's three things that in life are undefeated, and that is death, um, a woman's love for a man, and age, and you can't stop them. And you can't say, well, look at Biden's past 4 years. Are we going to give all that up for a lousy, horrible 90 minutes that he did? No, we're not electing Biden because what he did for the last 4 years. We would be electing Biden. What's going to happen over the next 4 years? Um, and I thought Trump's performance at the debate was horrible. I thought the amount of lies that he told and the lack of specificity, that he was going to talk about policy. There's no policies, except he denigrated our country left and right. And so we're really left without choices. And so I went into the weekend pretty depressed, to be honest with you. Um, we had a couple Supreme Court decisions last week. We had the Chevron decision, which gave more power to private companies, less power to government to regulate industries. And I've said before, hey, you know what? I don't want the government in my bedroom. I don't want the courts in my bedroom. But when I get on an airplane, I want the government to certify that that airplane is safe, not Delta. And when I drink water, I want the government to tell me that the water I'm drinking is safe, or the lake I'm swimming in is safe, as opposed to Dominion or the local utility company. And when I get on Amtrak, I want the national transportation to tell me that the train is safe and not Amtrak itself. So there is a place for regulation. So I was very skeptical of the Supreme Court. I've been skeptical of the Supreme Court. I've talked about Alito and the flags that he's flown and his wife has flown, and certainly Clarence Thomas he's received over $4 million of benefits from Harlan Crow since 2014. Cases that come before the Supreme Court. But the mother of all cases came on Monday, and I was very fearful of what was going to happen. I knew it wasn't going to be a decision that, as a lawyer, I would like and respect. I knew that based on what Justice Sotomayor said about 4 weeks ago, brace yourselves, that she was telling the world, hey, this is going to be a game changer. And on Monday, the immunity decision came down, and it was shocking. It was a 6-3 ideological vote, where the six conservative justices voted in favor of granting the president of the United States certain types of immunity, and I'll talk about that. And remember, when the Supreme Court during the Nixon administration, they had an 8-0 vote that what he did was not immunized. It was very important that that time that the Supreme Court speak with one voice. In the case that went before the Supreme Court, it was a 3-0 vote in the DC circuit that Trump was not entitled to immunity for what he did on January 6th and tried to, have the fake electors. And so he has raised this defense in all of his cases. And even in the New York hush money case, he raised the defense of immunity because some of the actions took place after he became president. The Stormy Daniels payments and all that, and the what was going to happen in burying those stories. Took place before he was elected in 2016. But some of the text messages that he sent in 2018 were used to convict him. In the DC case in front of Judge Chunkin, she has the election interference case, and he has raised immunity for that. In the Atlanta case in front of the Fulton County prosecutor, he has raised immunity in that, and he's raised immunity as a defense to the classified documents case in Florida, even though most of the conduct, all the conduct, took place after he was no longer president when he took the documents from the White House to Mar-a-Lago. So let's talk about the immunity decision. The Supreme Court held that Trump is entitled to immunity for all actions taken when he talks to his Justice Department and to his cabinet. So when he talks to his Justice Department and cabinet, even if it's illegal what he's talking to them about, even if he asks them to try to interfere with the election, interfere with the certification by the Vice President of the United States, anything that does is absolutely and constitutionally immunized, meaning he can never be prosecuted for it. Now, remember, after the January 6th insurrection and they had the second impeachment hearing and he was exonerated, Mitch McConnell got on the House floor, the head of the majority leader of the Senate, and said, President Trump can be prosecuted for every single thing that he's done as president of the United States. Everything that we just exonerated him for from impeachment is subject to criminal liability. Well, that turned out to not be true. And just so you understand it, uh, the argument for the Supreme Court conservatives has always been that the liberal justices, whether it's Brennan and Douglas or Hugo Black or Sotomayor or whatever, write things into the Constitution. That's why Roe v. Wade was reversed with the Dobbs decision, because under the original intent and construction of the constitutional documents, it is not in the constitutional document itself. They came up with the right of privacy by looking at the 14th Amendment, and they wrote it in there. And they dealt with equal protection with men and women, yada yada yada. And it was reversed because the conservatives said it's not in the Constitution. Well, presidential immunity is not in the Constitution. We fought the Revolutionary War because we didn't want to be subservient to the King of England. We worship men, not kings. And we have co-equal branches of government. All men are created equal. I lament the fact that it didn't say all men and women or all people, but the gist of it was that everybody is created equal. And no branch of the government, whether it's executive, legislative, or judicial, is more powerful than the other. In fact, though, it's really not true. The legislative branch, even in the Constitution, was granted more powers because it's the closest to the people. It's the people who elect them. And the House Ways and Means Committee, which is the power of the purse, is the most powerful, really, committee in the country because it allocates money for governmental functions. Our founding fathers knew what immunity is, and they didn't give it to the President of the United States. You know who they gave it to? Read the speech and debate clause in the Constitution. They gave it to Congress. What it says is congressional leaders, congressional, Senate, Republican, Senate, and House members have immunity when they're speaking on the House floor. They can incite a riot, they can defame somebody, and they have immunity. Our founding fathers gave that to the legislators, but they didn't want to give it to the President of the United States because they didn't want him to become a king. Well, this decision now says that Donald Trump is immunized for discussing overthrowing our government, doing a coup, encouraging his vice president not to do the duties and certify the election. And Donald Trump says for a president to be capable of doing his office, he has to have immunity. Well, guess what? Sometimes there's unintended consequences. There isn't a constitutional scholar that I read that said that this was a well-reasoned decision. They said it's going to be one of the most pernicious decisions ever rendered by the court. It's up there with Dred Scott, which is when they said that for census purposes in 1869, I think it was, black people can only count three-quarters of a person. Guess who has immunity when the example is Donald Trump says, "Go SEAL Team 6, kill my adversary." Donald Trump does. You know who doesn't? SEAL Team 6. They can be tried for murder. If somebody comes and bribes President Trump for an ambassadorship or a cabinet position, and it's in the dissent written by Sotomayor, under the ruling by the Supreme Court, Donald Trump has immunity for that. He can take a bribe. He cannot be criminally charged for that. Guess who can be criminally charged? The person that gives the bribe. So what we've done is we've elevated the man, the office, over the rest of the public. And I think it is a clear erosion of democracy. It's very scary for me as a lawyer. I think it was a poorly reasoned decision. Um, uh, Justice Amy Coney Barrett wrote a concurring decision, which means she wrote agreed with the ruling, but not with the reasoning, and said that the issue of immunity should never be determined by the judge, but by a jury of our peers, the Sixth Amendment right. A jury should determine whether President Trump deserves immunity as a defense for his conduct. So that was the shot that's heard around the world. Um, I am going on the record as saying it was a disappointing decision. I think it's going to have long repercussions. I'm going on record saying that Biden should step aside. I think he's going to lose the election. The election isn't going to be about the popular vote. He's going to win it. It's the battleground states: Michigan, Florida, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. That's where the election is. And he's going to lose the electoral vote. And not only is he going to lose, I believe, but he's going to hurt the down tickets, the governorships, the House races, the Senate races. And look, am I a Kamala Harris fan? Not by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like they've committed political malpractice by not giving her a bigger um, role in the administration. I get it that the rollout of her was not good. I get it that she's burned through staff and she speaks in word salads sometimes. But when she speaks about women's rights and Roe v. Wade, she knows what she's talking about. When she speaks on race, she knows what she's talking about. And I think it's too late even to put her out there as an alternative. I think the party needs to have that convention like they had in 1968 with Humphrey, and they need to find out on the floor of the convention who's it going to be. I like Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. I also like her picking somebody like a Wes Moore, an African American, which would not offend the African Americans, because if Kamala Harris doesn't get it. But I think the Democrats need to say, look, we're going to govern. They need to pick. They need to say we're going to put somebody like John Kasich, who's a Republican, as chief of staff, Chris Christie as the attorney general. That we're going to have a compromised government and not a fractional government. We're seeing what's happening in France. We're seeing what's happening in these European countries, and they're going far right. They're going for autocracy. Um, as a Jew, that scares me. I'm scared for minorities in our country. We're obviously seeing the Supreme Court and different courts endorse religion back in the school system. That case is going to go up before the Supreme Court. As I said last week, posting the Ten Commandments or Bibles in classrooms is offensive to people who are Muslim and Buddhist. Not offensive to me. I'm Judeo-Christian. I just don't want it in the classroom. We've already addressed that. We're a secular society. We don't mix religion and education, public education, that is. So those are the things that kind of are on my head right now going into it. Um, I think it's going to be interesting the next couple of months. I think Biden needs to put country over himself, and I'm afraid he won't do that. Um, I don't think Trump should debate him again. There's nothing in it for Trump. And if Biden is going to stay in the race, what he's going to have to do is get out there without a teleprompter, go on Fox News, get interviewed by Sean Hannity, go on Newsmax, have real press conferences in the White House press room, like Trump used to have during COVID. Get behind the podium, answer the hard questions, show the public that you do have the mental acuity and the alacrity um, uh, to run for president. But don't have your staff say, "Well, you had a cold or you traveled 10 days." You chose this debate. Um, don't say that you work from 10 to 4 and that they shouldn't have had you on at 9 o'clock at night. The president of the United States, it's a 24-hour job. So um, let's deal with that. Yesterday, Rudy Giuliani, he was disbarred from New York City because of what he tried to do after the 2020 election, running around the country and saying that, there were fraudulent votes counted. We already know that he got hit with $250 million judgment with the lovely mother and daughter in Atlanta for defamation. Um, it's a sad day. He was a revered prosecutor. Didn't really like him so much. I liked him as a mayor after 9/11, but some of his rhetoric I didn't particularly like. But I loved him as a prosecutor. He took on Michael Milken at Drexel Burnham Land Beer, Ivan Boesky in the 80s with junk bond scandals. He took down the mafia. He took down John Gotti. I mean, he was a tough mayor. Um, he is a sad person today. He can't practice law. He was just kicked off his radio show. So we are going to have this now go back to Judge Chunkin's courtroom, and there's going to be this will be the trial when to determine what acts Trump is immunized for and what he's not, because none of these trials are going to go before the November election, which is sad for the voters. What it makes me more sad is that it's not going to be televised. There's no cameras in the federal courtroom. That's what we talk about all the time. We were able to see the Murdaugh trial. We saw the Karen Reed trial. We understand why Karen Reed's verdict was a hung jury. And in that case, the judge, Allen, charged that jury twice. That means bringing the jury in after the jury says we're deadlocked, and the judge says, "Look, I want you to go back. I want you to continue to deliberate. I want you to use your free agency, open up your mind, be receptive to the other side's arguments, because we've spent 6 weeks on this trial, tons of money, and you've heard the evidence, and it's not going to be fair to these litigants to just have another jury picked." But the Karen Reed trial turned into a hung jury, and they were hopelessly deadlocked. And I think she was overcharged. I don't believe she should have been convicted. I don't think the evidence was there. But she's a fundamentally unlikable person. But being fundamentally unlikable doesn't mean that you should be convicted of a crime. So we do have that. We have Steve Bannon, who had to report to prison on July 1st. He disregarded a congressional subpoena and got 4 months in prison after he was convicted by a jury. Peter Navarro, who is also Trump's spokesperson on economics, is currently doing a 4 month term. When you look at those that are around Trump, remember, Trump is the only one who isn't in prison. In fact, Judge Merchan in the New York hush money trial just delayed his sentencing for 2 months in light of the Supreme Court decision. Steve Bannon went to jail. Peter Navarro went to jail. Um, Paul Manafort went to jail. Michael Flynn went to jail. Michael Cohen went to jail. Uh, Propagius went to jail. Gates went to jail. Um, Weisselberg went to jail. And um, who's the other guy? who has a tattoo of Nixon on his back. I forget his name. He wears the funky circle glasses. He also went to prison. So if you're in Trump's orbit, there's a high likelihood that you are going to get charged and you are going to go to prison. Weisselberger's was his CFO. Trump won't go because he's now got immunity from the United States Supreme Court. So I found that pretty interesting. One of the things that Trump is talking about is unleashing the military on cities that he considers are sanctuary cities, or cities like Portland that there's a lot of homeless and a lot of unrest. We have the Posse Comissar law that says you can't really unleash your military against your own citizens. So we're going to be stress tested if he's elected. Our guardrails that we have for democracy are going to be stress tested. Maya Angelou says that if somebody shows you who they are and they tell you who they are, believe it. Well, I think Trump is honest, and he's telling us who he is. He's going to seek retribution against judges, journalists. We're going to have McCarthy type of hearings. Eugene McCarthy, remember that? We're not old enough. Some of our parents are, during the 50s when they had the communist hearings in Congress on it. Are you a communist, sir? And they were blackballed from Hollywood and financial the financial industry. I think you're going to see that happening more and more with how he wants to pay back his enemies for what they've done to him. Um, and I'm very worried about unleashing the military on our borders and our citizens. Um, so I the Boston Celtics won the championship. Now they're up for sale. Amazing. They won 18 championships, and now the guy puts it up for sale. Bronny James was, sure enough, drafted by the Lakers, and in the second round with the 55th pick. And he was given guaranteed contract, which is stunning to me. JJ Redick is now going to have to figure out how to give him practice time or game time. And if he doesn't, his daddy's going to be pretty pissed off because LeBron James just signed a 2-year guaranteed deal for $104 million. Clay Walker left the Warriors for the Dallas Mavericks. So that's breaking up the Draymond Green, Seth Curry trio that won a ton of championships. So let me check my notes here just to make sure. I talked about the Karen Reed verdict. I am a little concerned that, Thomas and Alito actually sat on that immunity decision. Obviously, Thomas's wife participated in the election issues after the 2020 election, met with Eastwood and Clark, who were with the Justice Department, to come up with the scheme of coming up with fake electors. I think it should have conflicted Thomas off of the case. Judge Alito's wife, obviously, as part of the Stop the Steal movement, we talked about the flags that are posted on their property, um, both in Virginia and on Long Island. So I think that's a problem. What troubled me is that Justice Thomas, in his concurring opinion, that is an opinion that